Hey friends, Paul Knapp here. Sorry this is a little late. It's been a it's been a long couple of weeks, and I'm actually taking a couple of days off here to get caught up on a bunch of stuff, including homework in this class, homework in another class, and so yeah. Anyway, I'm going to get right to the point because I've really struggled to fit this within the 5 minute timeline. I don't think it will be. Hopefully, the topic is intriguing enough to draw you in. So my question is, how is our humanity tied to our sexuality? And there seems to be this argument amongst our early church fathers, at least the ones that we've been reading, that the answer to this greater question of what it means to be human is somehow tied to our createdness. That one, human is not an animal because they are, one, created. Two, they recognize that they are created, or they recognize that they exist, right? Which is unique to the human. And three, they correlate their purpose with their createdness, i.e., because we were created and can recognize or accept that we were created, we can therefore also recognize that there must be purpose for this creation. And then it is then that purpose which swirls in debate, right? There doesn't seem to be an exclusive, singular response for all of humanity. Now, there's ideas, right, out there like we're universally supposed to pursue shalom or tikkun olam, this repair and restoration of the world, or we're supposed to love everybody, we're supposed to care for the created world. But it's not an equal acceptance across all people or across the greater ecumenical church. And so one aspect of this purposefulness that I would like to question is sexuality, and more specifically, the purposefulness or necessity of our sexuality as it pertains to being human. So, scenario. Recently, and this is a true story, I had a volunteer in one of my ministry communities that I manage come out as same-sex attracted. And this has sparked a significant debate within the greater organization that I work for, whether or not this individual can remain involved at the same level that they're currently participating at. Now, I don't want to hash out that conversation. I'm sure there was a well of emotions within you on either side of this argument, and that's not the conversation that I necessarily want to have within this short video. But the conversation, or at least the debate that has sparked within me, or at least I've had a lot of deep thought about this, is how is our sexuality, how is it intertwined with our humanity? Because at the heart of this debate concerning same-sex attraction is the larger question, which is what we're asking: what does it mean to be human? So for the sake of the conversation, and to not hash out that debate, I'm going to classify the five scriptural references to homosexuality. As you can see, I'm going to list them here on this screen. I'm going to classify them as clearly debatable, as that there isn't necessarily one clear way, when considering context, that these scriptures are calling us to in relation to the sexual necessity in terms of attractiveness. And so therefore I'm going to try to frame this argument without them. I'll instead try to use the first two chapters of Genesis, which our early church fathers seem to continue to return to as their foundation for their arguments around humanity as well. And so Genesis 1:26 through 27, it says this: "Then God said, 'Let us make human beings in our image, to be like us. They will reign over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, the livestock, all the wild animals on the earth, and the small animals that scurry along the ground.'" Verse 27, "So God created human beings in his own image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them." This seems to serve as the origin story within the greater ecumenical church as the genesis for humanity. God creates human beings in their image and likeness with the commission to rule over the rest of the created world. And it distinctly says, male and female, he created them. And then a chapter later, this is Genesis 2:23 through 25. The first marriage ceremony occurs between these two created beings who are male and female. And this is then what serves as our biblical mandate for marriage, as between a man and a woman. However, God is not necessarily explicit or exclusive, right? God merely marries them and unites them as one. He doesn't say, "and this will then serve as my mandate for marriage." No, God just marries them. So one must question if there is no necessarily explicit reference that this is the only kind of marriage which is acceptable. Now, from that point on, there's a ton of scriptural reference to marriage that I'm not going to bring up here, but this serves as the bedrock for the biblical mandate of marriage. in all arguments. We must wonder then, if he's not explicit, if God isn't necessarily exclusive in the what he's calling us to here, why does he then choose this scenario for marriage? Well, if we read it literally, it would imply that there are only two people on the earth, and so if a marriage ceremony is going to occur, they're the only two options. So maybe this is an argument that we're making more for unity, that we're meant to live life together, not alone. And it just so happens that the only two people on the planet at that point are a man and a woman. And so, which we would all say there's incredible differences between those two people. And coming together, it gives the earth the best chance for survival. There's a much bigger story being painted in that context. But I would say that there actually is a much more explicit expectation and actually a necessity for this male and female marriage that God is leading to us here to in Genesis 2. And we actually have to go back to Genesis 1 in order to find that. So returning to Genesis 1, God gives these newly created beings a second commission. He says in verse 28, Genesis 1, then God blessed them and said, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and govern it. Therefore, we can assume that this marriage carried a necessity to procreate, to reproduce, to fill the world. And at the time these scriptures were recorded, the only way to reproduce was through sexual relations found in opposite sex attraction. Therefore, it is reproduction which solidifies the biblical mandate for marriage as between a man and a woman, at least within the pre-first century context. So a little bit about me. I was born with a condition called Sertoli cell only syndrome. It's a fancy name which makes the condition sound way more serious than it is, but essentially there's nothing wrong with me in any biological or physiological way other than my body can only produce 3 of the 4 necessary ingredients required for my participation in the reproductive process. And for the sake of time, which I'm already over, I'll leave it at that, but I would encourage you to Wikipedia. Essentially, I'm sterile. I can't and I will never be able to participate in the reproductive process as mandated by Scripture. So, does that make me less human? If my humanity is tied to my sexuality, and the purpose of my sexuality is to find my ability and willingness to reproduce, and am I less human and therefore less justified in my faith because I can't reproduce? I hope all of you are with me and would declare an emphatic no, because infertility is an epidemic, right? Miscarriages after miscarriages. I have so many friends who are experiencing this right now, this inability to reproduce, this inability to carry out this incredible joy. When my wife and I were first going into this, we had 6 other close friends who were going through something similar, trying to reproduce, trying to get pregnant, and over and over and over coming up empty, or experiencing great loss within the pregnancies that they found. It hurts. There's so much brokenness in it. But to say that it defines them as any less human, I'm not there yet. It's all around us, this idea of infertility. And I'd be willing to bet that all of us know someone who's experienced it. We've all experienced some kind of variance. Maybe we've even experienced it yourself. And no one would ever say that you or I or anyone is living outside of their humanity because they were created with some unnatural variance that they couldn't help and didn't choose. I didn't choose Sertoli cell only syndrome. I would love to be able to participate in this process, into that biblical mandate, but I can't. Therefore, considering that, is it just to apply that grace that we show to opposite sex attracted people, while at the same time declaring same-sex attraction as unholy, unnatural, because they can't reproduce, just like I can't reproduce? And I would say no. And I would like to call the church, the Big C church, not the Reformed church, not the Baptist church, not the Methodist or the Presbyterian church, the Big C church, the ecumenical church of the world, into a higher space where we pursue and uphold values such as commitment, fidelity, and monogamy in its relation to our humanity, rather than gender-based attraction and our definition of what it means to be a created child of God. Grace and peace, friends. Have a great Thanksgiving.